In the 6th year of my marriage to the impoverished top scholar, he finally rose to the position of chief minister. Everyone said he lacked even a shred of a scholar's loftiness. He was a resolute, scheming, yet loyal minister. That was why he had climbed so quickly and so high. Despite knowing he harbored a secret love for another, I stood by him all along, enduring the scorn of those from distinguished families, while also receiving the adulation of his subordinates' wives. In the end, my husband, a man of mixed reputation, yet widely acknowledged as obsessed with power and influence, was willing to risk his career and the lives of our entire family to elope with a princess who did not wish to marry, fleeing the city. I asked, "Even if I die too?" He replied, "Even if you die too." 6 years of marriage severed in a single day. After our divorce, I journeyed far away, and we have not seen each other for years. In the vast deserts of the Northwest, where post stations were scarce, I lost contact with the capital for 3 years. Only my father would send someone every so often to check on my well-being. No one else knew where I had gone. By the time I returned to the capital, everything from those days had long since settled. Princess Jinghe, who had eloped, had complied with the emperor's will that very year and married into the Shi family as a principal wife. As for Gu Yunxuan, he remained firmly in his position as chief minister. The moment I entered the city, a barrage of rumors came my way. I wonder if Princess Ningping regrets abandoning the chief minister when he was at his lowest point. Now that the Guyu family's power remains overwhelming, the princess has wasted her youth. Where will she find another husband as good as this one? Women's perspectives are always a bit narrow. If you ask me, His Highness the Prince of Qin really should have had more children. With just this one and only princess, he spoiled her rotten. That's not right. His Highness the Prince of Qin is a great hero of our dynasty. Thank goodness the times are more open-minded now. Otherwise, speaking of nobles and princes like that would cost you your head. The maidservant Chu Tang yanked the curtain aside, indignant. What do they know? It was clearly he who abandoned the princess first. How dare they turn the tables on him? I patted the back of her hand to soothe her. Then, I said calmly, the emperor would never publicize the scandals of the imperial family. To outsiders, Gu Yunxuan had merely been neglected for a time, confined to his residence for 3 months, barred from attending court, and unable to see his majesty. As for me, I was the one with a narrow mind, fearing the collapse of the Gu household and making plans well in advance. I even smiled. If outsiders were to learn that our separation was not a mutual divorce but a formal repudiation, the venom from those eager to spread gossip would surely drown the Prince of Qin's mansion. We made our way back to the mansion. My father had been waiting outside the main gate for some time. The moment he saw me, his eyes welled up with tears. The man who once fought on the battlefield became as gentle as silk in the presence of my mother and me. Your mother didn't know you'd be arriving today. She went outside the city to pray for your safety. Tears welled up in my eyes as I let my father's rough, calloused hands stroke my head. Only then did I follow him through the gate, acting a little spoiled. 3 years away. At first, I was filled with confusion and anguish. I lost my appetite, and within a few short months, I had wasted away to skin and bones. Later, I gradually calmed my heart and began to enjoy the scenery of the desert. In that vast expanse, every tear I shed in solitude was absorbed by the thick, yellow earth. All the unfulfilled longings of my youth faded into the mists of the past. On an ordinary night 3 years later, I suddenly missed my parents in the capital. So I packed my belongings that very night and hurried back to the capital. In the Prince of Qin's mansion, I was always the apple of their eye, not the spent her youth and vain old maid that outsiders spoke of. When my mother returned, she burst into tears the moment she saw me. I felt deeply guilty. It wasn't until late at night, after we had finished our meal, that we sat together in the courtyard admiring the moon, and my father finally whispered, "The emperor still does not trust me." There was a long silence. Finally, I forced a smile. Tomorrow, when I go to the palace to pay my respects to Uncle the Emperor, perhaps seeing me in this pathetic state might put his mind at ease. My father's smile remained strained, but he nodded. What threat could a prince, long stripped of his military authority, possibly pose to the emperor? Yet a person's suspicion is incurable. During the reign of the late emperor, there were 9 princes in total. The current emperor was the eldest son of the principal consort, yet he was not as brilliant in scholarship as the 7th prince, Prince Ning, nor as invincible in battle as his younger brother, Prince Qin. Even among the remaining princes, he was not the most outstanding one. Before the late emperor passed away, rumors of a change in the crown prince's succession would swirl every so often. He let them run their course. Whether this was a genuine intention or merely a tactic to spur the current emperor to improve, I cannot say. In any case, the current emperor spent decades unable to sleep at night, living in fear under the shadow of those rumors. After the current emperor ascended the throne, my uncles either died or were deposed, leaving only my father as his sole surviving full brother. In the imperial court, he not only suppressed any family that had ever suggested replacing the crown prince with all his might, but also frequently arranged marriages between noble houses and commoners to weaken the bonds between the aristocratic clans. As for my father, it was not enough to strip him of his military authority. He had to be constantly watched. My marriage to Gu Yunxuan was the result of his testing. Now, all I can do is wait and see. The next day, accompanied by my mother, I entered the palace. As we walked along the long palace avenue outside the Hall of Supreme Harmony, I caught a faint glimpse of a familiar figure standing in the distance. I did not linger to look, but quickened my pace toward the inner palace. The emperor smiled kindly and first asked if I had grown accustomed to life in the northwest over the past few years. Then he asked if I had any regrets. I answered each question in turn. Not only had I grown accustomed to it, but I had absolutely no regrets. His expression stiffened slightly. Finally, he asked the question he had been waiting for. Is there anyone you have set your heart on? I bowed my head, a smile playing at the corners of my lips, granting his wish. Yes, Uncle Emperor. He could not hide the surprise in his eyes and pressed further. Which young gentleman has caught the eye of our Ningping? A touch of tenderness flickered in my eyes. His surname is Lu. His background is a bit humble. He's an orphan, but he's exceptionally well educated. Before he could press further, I volunteered. It is your imperial uncle's minister of the Supreme Court, Lord Lu Hexing. His brows, which had been unconsciously furrowed, finally relaxed completely. A high-ranking official, yet of humble and simple origins, a man of integrity, just like Gu Yunchuan. He nodded approvingly. Ningping has excellent judgment. As I took my leave from the palace, Mother looked at me with deep concern. Banyue, why didn't you tell me about this beforehand? I replied calmly. Mother, the emperor will eventually have me marry someone. Rather than passively waiting, I'd much rather choose for myself. Wasn't that exactly how the marriage he had arranged for me before had ended? He only wanted to keep the daughter my father cherished most firmly in his grasp as for the rest. As long as it wasn't too disgraceful, why would he ever care? Mother sighed, but ultimately asked no further questions. She merely set a date for me to summon Lu Hexing to our home for a meeting. I nodded in agreement. That very night, a tall, slender figure slipped into my courtyard. I asked only one question. Who is it? And from the faltering of the visitor's breath, I recognized him. It was Gu Yunchuan, my ex-husband, the man whose divorce from me 3 years ago had caused a citywide scandal. The scent of green bamboo on him was familiar. In the dim night, it slowly and inexorably permeated every inch of the space. We stood facing each other in silence for a long while. Finally, I spoke first. I don't want this to get too ugly, Gu Yunchuan. If you don't leave now, I'll call for help. Yet his breathing grew increasingly ragged, and he drew closer and closer, until he stopped just an inch away from me, his warm breath mere inches from my face. He asked hoarsely, "Are you going to remarry?" I nodded. Then I thought he might not be able to see. So I added, "I am going to remarry." But he slowly crouched down. In the darkness, he looked up at me, a sliver of moonlight from the back window reflecting in his eyes. "You only consider others, not me." I remained gentle. Even if every man in the world were to die out, leaving only you, I would never form the slightest bond with you again. His figure wavered. After a long while, I had grown impatient. Only then did he say softly, "If my words have hurt you, then I apologize, Banyue. But you can't treat me this way. First, you left without a word, and I searched everywhere for you. Now you tell me you're going to marry someone else. Zhang Banyue, you simply cannot treat me this way." By the time I uttered those final words, my voice had broken. I smiled. I'm still used to you being so rigid and formal with me. Just like back then, when all the special treatment was reserved for my arch-rival, Princess Jinghe. In that case, I would have merely felt disgust, not the utter revulsion, welling up from the depths of my soul as I do now. Even after I finished speaking, he remained motionless. I couldn't take it anymore and kicked him hard in the shoulder. Only after seeing him fall to the ground did I raise my voice to call for someone to come in. As footsteps drew near and the candlelight flickered to life, I clearly saw that this man, who never smiled or spoke lightly, had 2 clear streams of tears running down his face, disappearing into the meticulous folds of his robe. Gu Yunchuan was not always this way. I had met him before the emperor arranged our marriage. At that time, Jinghe and I had just had a fight, and I had turned on my heel and slipped into the Chonglin banquet to escape the rain. Through the throng of people, I spotted the newly crowned top scholar leading the group in paying homage to the emperor. He was slender, yet his face was like a jade carving, delicate and gentle. Outside the pavilion, torrential rain was pouring down. From the frayed, bleached cuff of his sleeve, the wet head of a raccoon dog peeked out. He promptly pushed it back inside without a word, even feeding it half a pastry as he did so. I was so captivated by the scene that I failed to notice the flush spreading across Jinghe's cheek as he gazed at Xiajia's eldest son, the runner-up in the imperial examinations. Barely 3 days later, at a palace banquet, the emperor arranged a marriage between me and Gu Yunchuan. Though it was a royal decree, he still went through the motions. Does Ningping find my top scholar to her liking? The young man wore a composed expression, as if the matter had nothing to do with him, quietly listening as the emperor arranged his marriage. I only learned later that he had lost both his parents and had only a young younger sister. I had already developed a fondness for him by then. Before I could answer, I heard my father's voice ring out from the front. "Your Majesty, Ningping is still young. As I have only this one daughter, please allow me and the princess consort to keep her with us for a few more years." In full view of everyone, the emperor did not reply immediately, leaving him kneeling there. A chill ran through my heart and I began to panic, but my mother pressed her hand firmly over mine. I don't know how long it was before the emperor finally gave a soft snort and said, "Then go back and think it over carefully." In the garden of the prince's mansion, my father shouted harshly, "I've risked my life for him, yet all he does is suspect me. That would be one thing, but I have only this one daughter. Must I marry her off to a boy who is destined to be a puppet, who is at odds with the great clans and lives from one day to the next?" My mother spoke gently in consolation. "Even if we must defy the imperial decree, we should not act so impulsively. After today's scene, I fear he will have to work tirelessly day and night for quite some time once he returns." But father remained furious. I listened for a long time before walking over to him and kneeling. I knelt upright and bowed my head. Father, please do not quarrel with the emperor again for my sake. Over the years, because Jinghe and I did not get along back when I first entered the palace and my parents were away at war, she often bullied me. Later, after my parents returned, Father taught me how to fight back and stand up to her. But Jinghe was, after all, the emperor's princess. Father didn't want me to suffer any injustice, so he stood his ground before the emperor on many occasions, provoking the emperor's sarcasm and causing him to constantly send people to watch Father's every move. Even so, Father still refused to let me be wronged and encouraged me to make a scene whenever necessary. But this time, the emperor was clearly furious. I could no longer hide behind my parents with a clear conscience as I had done before, causing trouble for them. Besides, Gu Yunchuan is a very decent man. I am willing to marry him. Compared to those idle playboys in the capital who know nothing but pleasure, there is nothing wrong with him. Father sat in silence for a long time, so long that several pots of tea had gone cold. Only then did he close his eyes briefly and agree to my words. And so, the marriage was naturally put on the agenda. From start to finish, Gu Yunchuan never said what was good about it, nor what was bad. When he couldn't scrape together the betrothal gifts, the emperor bestowed them upon him. Until the day I stepped into the wedding palanquin, Jinghe came to my boudoir, ostensibly to add to my trousseau, yet the smugness on her face was not the slightest bit concealed. She leaned down, gazing into my eyes in the mirror, her red lips parting with a hidden meaning. Ningping, you must make sure to live well from now on. I simply took it as her being sarcastic. But after the wedding, I came to understand. It wasn't that. It wasn't sarcasm. It was a statement that cut straight to the heart. Gu Yunchuan had someone else in his heart. 3 months into our marriage, that was what I came to believe. He was a man of self-restraint and propriety. Even when we shared a bed, we slept under separate quilts. I simply assumed that was his nature. Even as we lived side by side every day, he treated me with the formality of a guest. I was only 16 at the time, and had merely caught a fleeting glimpse of him at the Changlin banquet. I simply couldn't make sense of it. Just as I was feeling this inner anguish, my mother came to visit me. After listening to my words, she said with a hint of bitterness, "Banyue, couples like your father and me are rare in this world. Most men either have multiple wives and concubines, or indulge in carnal pleasures, or harbor a preference for men and avoid women altogether. Worse still, some are obsessed solely with power and influence. As long as it serves their purposes, they will compromise and betray even their own kin and old friends." Gu Yunchuan is a diligent scholar. That alone means he won't have much of his heart and mind devoted to romantic affairs. It's my fault for thinking you were too young to handle such harsh truths. But since you married him as the emperor wished, your father and I would risk our lives to ensure he never takes a concubine into the household and disturbs your peace. As long as you stay true to yourself, you won't have a bad life. I nodded, still half asleep. But then, in an untimely moment, I remembered the silk pouch he never parted with. Now that he has a salary, he dresses much more respectably. Only that pouch, worn and out of place, still hangs from his waist. He even washes it himself, never letting anyone else touch it. It looked familiar to me, yet I couldn't quite place where I'd seen it before. I had truly taken my mother's words to heart, and my state of mind had grown much more peaceful. Sometimes, when he returned late at night, I would leave a lamp burning for him. Gradually, though he remained as rigid as ever, he would occasionally share some lighthearted stories with me. Life after our marriage had already become much more bearable. Until one day during a game of chess, when he still wouldn't give me an inch. It was the time of my monthly cycle, and I was feeling particularly irritable. Without thinking, I blurted out, "Can't you just let me win?" As always, he replied gently, "Princess, this is a game of chess. There is no room for letting one another win." I stared at him blankly, then suddenly asked, "Do you know my name?" Under the moonlight, the tips of his silky hair swirled in the breeze, circling a few times before falling limply back into place. The courtyard fell into dead silence. A hint of embarrassment flashed across his face, but I felt even more awkward. I abruptly stood up and hurried back into my room, my skirt brushing against the chess pieces and disrupting the game. A long time later, a low "I'm sorry" drifted in through the half-open window. I pulled the silk quilt over my head and wept silently in the warmth beneath the covers. A figure soon pushed open the door and walked in, sitting down on the edge of the bed. A familiar scent gradually filled the air. Just before I felt suffocated, he reached out and gently lifted the quilt, gazing at my flushed face. "It was my fault. Don't be sad," he said awkwardly. Then he raised his hand and patted my back, his touch unfamiliar. I gritted my teeth. "My name is Zhang Banyue. Remember that." He asked me to spell it out, letter by letter. My anger flared again, and I said defiantly, "Can I take a look at that silk pouch of yours?" This time, however, he refused, remaining silent. I finally gave in, stopped asking, and turned my back on him. In that moment, I realized with crystal clarity, my husband had not a shred of affection for me. We'd been married for so long, yet he didn't even know my name, nor did he care. Moreover, it seemed as though someone else occupied his heart. For the days that followed, we were locked in a cold war. He appeared no different than usual. After all, he was always busy, and his nature was calm and reserved. The only one suffering was me, until the season of the autumn hunt arrived. As a newly promoted minister of the emperor, he was permitted to bring his family along. Deep within that impenetrable forest, Jinghe and I were locked in a silent rivalry, unwittingly venturing deeper and deeper until we were suddenly ambushed by a pack of wolves, both of us in grave danger. He led the search party to find us. Then, as the alpha wolf lunged forward, he threw himself forward without hesitation, shielding Jinghe with his own body. Even as the alpha wolf began to tear at his back, he remained careful, restraining himself from making even the slightest contact with Jinghe. He cherished her that much. No matter who witnessed it, it would not tarnish Jinghe's reputation in the slightest. Yet his voice betrayed his anxiety. Is the princess injured? I had been preparing to fight the wolves. In that instant, however, my ears rang. A wolf seized the moment and sank its teeth into my arm. Startled back to my senses, I finished the wolf with a single stroke. Then, gritting my teeth against the excruciating pain, rushed over to help him. Much later, the Imperial guards who had arrived on the scene slaughtered the pack of wolves to the last. Only then did Gu Yunchuan collapse to the ground, his face ashen. Blood poured from his shoulders and back, staining the green grass beneath him crimson. Yet the most severe injury was to the hand he'd used to brace himself. It hung limply by his side until the Imperial physician who had rushed to the scene cried out in shock. "It's broken." Only then did Jinghe burst into tears, sobbing his thanks. As his wife, I stood far off to the side. My face was expressionless, until he suddenly thought of something and looked up at me. In the face of my calm gaze, his complexion turned completely ashen. Upon returning to camp, he was duly commended by the Emperor for saving the princess. But in a secluded spot on the journey back, my father slapped him across the face. He offered no rebuttal, allowing my father to grab him by the collar and demand if he was a husband at all. I turned my head away, neither intervening nor looking. I could only wonder, was he so obsessed with power and prestige that he threw caution to the wind, desperate to earn the princess's gratitude for saving her life? So much so that he didn't even notice the sword beside him and insisted on putting himself in danger? Or was it because he was infatuated with Jinghe that his concern clouded his judgment, leaving him no spare energy to pay attention to his surroundings, his sole focus being her safety? In the end, I realized with sorrow, whichever it was, I, his wife, was of no consequence in his eyes. Not as important as Jinghe, and certainly not as important as power. Inside the carriage, it finally grew quiet. He whispered an apology to my father. My father neither listened nor looked. He simply sat across from me and said despondently, "If I'd known back then, even if it meant being stripped of my title, I would never have let you marry such a man." Gu Yunchuan closed his eyes, his lips trembling slightly. I stopped my father and said in a pleading tone, "I'd like to stay at the Gu residence for a while." He agreed without hesitation. As soon as we entered the city, we went our separate ways. By the time I returned to the Gu residence after staying away for 10 days, Gu Yunchuan was already able to walk upright. Only his arm was still in a sling. Seeing me enter, he hurriedly stood up from the small table where we used to play chess. He immediately walked over and hastily used his good hand to roll up my sleeve, wanting to examine my injury. I shifted slightly to the side, dodging his hand. Without a trace of emotion on my face, I avoided him and walked toward the courtyard. Shortly after, the servants I'd brought from the prince's mansion filed in one after another. They packed up my belongings and moved them straight to the courtyard furthest from the main residence. But he thought I was leaving the Jiyu estate. Gu Yunchuan, who was usually cautious in his words and deeds, now looked frantic. "Princess, Ban Yue, please listen to me. I didn't mean to." I pretended not to hear him and continued giving orders to Chutong. "Make sure nothing gets damaged. Go keep an eye on things. Later, have them come to you to collect their rewards. With the Mid-Autumn Festival approaching, give each of them an extra 10 taels." Chu Tang nodded and left. I turned to leave as well, but Gu Yunchuan grabbed my sleeve with a firm grip. He came from a poor background. Though he looked slender and handsome, beneath his clothes, he possessed every muscle one would expect. Now that he had a firm hold on my sleeve, even with my basic martial arts training, I couldn't break free. I might as well sit down and set the record straight with him. "There's no need for further words. I won't seek a divorce from you. Let's just carry on like this." Recalling how I'd once tried to grow close to him in my ignorance, I added, "Let's just forget about what happened before. The marriage was arranged by His Majesty, and we've been wed for barely a year. To seek a divorce now would be a blatant slap in his face. Besides, I'm not short on money. I can live well anywhere. As for that glance back then, I'll pretend I never saw it." A pang of bitterness still lingered in my heart, but compared to continuing to humiliate myself, it was all trivial. I never expected Gu Yunchuan to be so candid with me. "Princess Jinghe is the one who saved my life." At the mention of Jinghe, I couldn't help but sneer. "She's been confined to the palace all this time. Where exactly did she save you? Could it be that at the Qianglin banquet you fell for her at first sight but, bound by imperial authority, married me instead? Is that just an excuse you've concocted?" He shook his head and sat down as well. "She truly is my savior." Seeing his solemn expression, I tempered my anger slightly. As he recalled the past, a hint of sorrow crossed his brow. 5 years ago, Gu Yunchuan was 14, and his widowed mother was on the verge of death. But the money he earned copying texts and carrying sandbags was nowhere near enough to cover the costs of medicine and medical fees. In his despair, he had even considered selling himself into slavery. Yet the thought that no one would care for his mother if he became a servant kept him from making a decision. He had long since stopped studying, and the family's book collection had been sold off long ago. The deeds to their house and land had been either used as collateral or sold off. That night, he knelt by his mother's bedside and said through tears, "There's still some silver left. Just focus on getting better." Then he pushed open the door, changed into clothes without patches, and made his way toward the red light district. His body was all he had left of value. After that night, he would have no further connection whatsoever with his scholarly path. Unexpectedly, right at the entrance to the alley, a young woman on horseback galloped toward him, her horse's hooves nearly trampling him. The young woman let out a startled cry, reined in her horse, and tilted her head to look at him for a long moment. Then, she pulled a silk pouch from her waist, flung it far into his arms with a haughty expression, and rode off without a second glance. It felt like a dream. Years later, he still couldn't recall exactly what the girl had said from her horse. He only knew she was dressed in fine clothes, adorned with jewels, and clearly a noblewoman. Inside the silk pouch was a gold ingot shaped like a rabbit. Not only did it help him cure his mother's illness, allowing her to pass away peacefully in her old age, but it also covered the rent for his house and enabled him to complete his studies, however haltingly. It wasn't until he won first place in the imperial examinations and, at the Changlin banquet, glanced over and recognized Princess Jinghe, the very person who had saved his life all those years ago. With his savior standing before him, he naturally had to acknowledge her. Not only acknowledge her, but also repay her kindness. After hearing this, I vaguely recalled an old story. But given our current circumstances, there was no need to bring it up again. I understand, I said. Compared to me, a wife who suddenly appeared out of nowhere, the debt of a life-saving favor was, of course, far more important. He asked doubtfully, "Really?" I nodded earnestly, "Really." But the thought that he had never once noticed me when I looked at him still made me feel a pang of sadness. And besides, I was still going to move out. I wouldn't stand in the way of him repaying his savior, nor did I wish to continue treating him as my true husband. So later on, he really shouldn't have kept coming back to provoke me. Gu Yunchuan rose through the ranks extremely quickly. The emperor was intent on cultivating his own circle of trusted confidants, and people of humble origins like him were being promoted one after another. Moreover, he had always maintained a sort of brotherly bond with my father. Every time he promoted Gu Yunchuan, he would then, with complete justification, summon my father to the palace to catch up. He felt that although he had bestowed upon me this marriage that seemed less than honorable, Gu Yunchuan's growing influence and power meant he owed me nothing. My father had no choice but to grit his teeth and accept it. Outside, people might gossip about me, saying my husband was only concerned with climbing the ladder and lacked the slightest bit of a scholar's integrity. But the families of many other commoners who had been promoted looked up to me greatly. Though the emperor is suspicious by nature, my father wholeheartedly approved of this move. He has witnessed the suffering of the people under the imperial rule, and understands just how precious the imperial examinations are to the common folk. So even though he dislikes Gu Yunchuan, he still offers guidance wherever he can, striving to prevent the aristocratic clans from gaining too much dominance. The only person who troubles me is Gu Yunchuan. I don't know what's gotten into him. He used to be so rigid. He wouldn't even help me apply my eyebrow makeup. But now, as soon as he receives his salary, he rushes off to the jewelry shops. Many have seen him blushing inside, all to pick out the perfect hairpins and earrings for me. I accept whatever he brings, but I have to send him away. Now, we live in separate courtyards, united only in name as husband and wife. He doesn't get angry about it. When Chu Tang fetches jewelry, he takes the opportunity to peek into my courtyard, and I pretend not to notice. As time goes on, he shows not a shred of impatience. Only I am growing restless and irritable. Until one day, I went to the outskirts of the capital to visit the orphans we'd taken in at the estate, only to catch chickenpox from a new child there. Upon returning to the mansion, I was burning with fever. Pushing through the fog of illness, I managed to tell Chu Tang, "Do not disturb the prince and princess." I knew my father and mother would surely come to care for me, but they are still in the prime of their lives. Having lived through enough perilous days in the past, they deserve to live out their remaining years in peace. After speaking those words, I fell completely into a deep fever. In a half-awake, half-asleep state, someone pushed open the door and, as usual, touched my forehead with a gentle, unfamiliar hand. He fed me medicine and changed my damp clothes. His fingers grew warm, moving with such care as not to disturb a single inch of my skin. A washcloth moved back and forth across my body. Several days passed before I finally opened my eyes fully, seeing the man who looked much more haggard yet remained as handsome as ever. Gu Yunchuan, seeing that I had woken, flustered. "Is there anywhere else you're feeling unwell?" I stared at him blankly. After a long while, a hoarse, disjointed question escaped my throat. "Gu Yunchuan, from now on, could you treat me this way too?" He froze for a moment. Then joy lit up his face, like ice and snow just beginning to melt, and a single tear formed at the corner of his eye. "As long as you're willing to forgive me." He said he had feelings for me. Though I didn't know where it came from that day forward, he put me first. A sick person is vulnerable. Under his meticulous care, I knew that the part of me I hadn't yet forgotten had once again wrapped itself around me, like a festering sore. After I recovered, I allowed him into my courtyard. He was overjoyed, his face radiating the youthful vigor that should naturally belong to someone his age. For the next 4 years, though he remained somewhat rigid and overly obsessed with power, I got along with him quite well. He no longer met with Jinghe, and he treated me better and better. At the height of our passion, we even exchanged vows as solemn as the mountains and seas. Learning of my love for travelogues and storybooks, he promised me, In a few years, when I resign from office, I will go with you to the northwest to travel the rivers and mountains. In the 6th year of our marriage, he finally rose to the position of chief minister. I hosted a small banquet in our residence to celebrate, and I was ready to let down my last remaining guard and open my heart to him. That night, however, the red candles burned out, and the sky began to lighten before he returned. 3 days later, he returned to the mansion in a hurry, and I intercepted him. I already knew that the emperor had once again drawn up the marriage register. This time, it was a royal match for Jinghe, who was a year younger than me. But unlike the old custom of having her leave the palace to establish her own household and welcoming a prince consort into her home, he was instead marrying her into the Xia family. This was to prevent the Xi family's eldest son from entering official service, forcing her with the dignity of a princess to become the matriarch of the Xi clan. One can only imagine the plots and malice she would face, entering that household alone as the one who ruined young Master Xi's future. The current emperor has become so deranged that he has reached the point of disowning his own daughter, and my husband, standing before me with his head bowed, his face filled with guilt, said he would help the princess escape in secret. Numbly, I asked, "Are you going with her?" He paused for a moment, then replied, "Yes." I asked again, "Do you realize that in the eyes of others, this is elopement and treason?" He bowed his head once more and said, "Yes." I pressed further, "Even if it means my death." He did not answer that. I took 2 steps forward and slapped him across the face. "Speak." He remained silent. Just then, a commotion sounded from outside the door. Someone called out to him in a hushed voice, "Sir, there's no time." He turned to leave, but I clamped my hand tightly around his arm and snapped, "Will you speak or not? You're not leaving until you do." I could see the people outside growing more and more urgent. He grew flustered and mumbled, "Yes." Having received an answer, I finally went limp and let go. Without hesitation, he strode out the door. Just before climbing into the carriage, he turned back for one last look. I slumped to the ground, muttering to myself, it was just a gold ingot I lost to her in a bet. That year, Jinghe had just been named a princess. She challenged me to a horseback riding contest on the outskirts of the capital, but she had a group of noble youths conspire with her to tamper with my horse. In the end, I lost as expected and handed over the most valuable item I possessed, a gold ingot my parents had told me was the most useful thing to carry while traveling. To her, she looked at me with utter disdain, finding me vulgar, yet she stuffed the gold into her silk pouch without a moment's hesitation. Many years later, during one of our rare moments of peace, she casually mentioned to me that back then, while galloping through the streets, she had nearly trampled a beggar boy to death. Seeing the lifeless look in his eyes and with no one else around, she grew a little frightened, so she tossed that vulgar gold to him. What did he know about what was tacky or not? His eyes lit up instantly. Even when I cursed him from my horse for being blind and blocking my path, he didn't react at all. She laughed heartily. I've always detested that sort of behavior in her, so I quickly put the whole matter out of my mind. It wasn't until Gu Yunchuan brought it up a few years ago that I remembered the incident. At first, I simply didn't think it was necessary to tell him. But later, I kept it to myself because I didn't want him to think that the only glimmer of light in his otherwise bleak life was merely the whim of someone who despised him, a momentary lapse of judgment. I thought that by publicly abandoning me to choose Jinghe, he had already repaid his debt of gratitude for saving his life. But I never imagined it wasn't enough. Perhaps from now on, it will never be enough. My father and mother have always been cautious in their words and deeds, yet it turns out they are to be ruined by a man like this. I scrambled to my feet and shouted at the carriage that was already fading into the distance, "Gu Yunchuan, I am divorcing you." Tears fell. I wiped them away casually, returned to my room to write the divorce decree, and set off for the prince's mansion that very night. After I spoke frankly with my parents, though they were furious, they told me, as a princess of the imperial family, you possess the right to divorce your husband. However, Gu Yunchuan holds a high and influential position. According to protocol, this requires the emperor's personal approval, so the matter is likely to drag on for some time. I no longer cared about such formalities. I wanted no further entanglement with him. I replied coldly, "Then let us part by mutual consent." With the emperor's own daughter having committed such a disgraceful act, I wonder what face he would have left to ask me to forgive Gu Yunchuan. After all, what I'm giving him is a letter of divorce. If the jade tablet bears the words divorce, what does it matter? Whether his bond with Jinghe was one of life-saving grace or romantic love, it no longer matters to me. I cannot stake the lives of my entire family on a husband who will always have someone more important to him. Amid my parents' tears, I left the city the very next day, and so it remains to this day. After so many years apart, he looked gaunt and emaciated, shoved out of my sight by servants holding torches. His figure was frail, his clothes barely hung on him. My heart was as hard as stone, and I shut the door. Lu Hexing and I met in the Great Desert. He had been ordered to capture a fugitive foreign spy and happened to burst into the inn where I was staying. That spy had been staying in the room next to mine for quite some time. My man was meticulous. For my safety, he had gathered detailed information on the daily routines of every guest. The moment I recognized Lu Hexing, I immediately began to cooperate with him, pulling the spy into my room before he realized he was being followed. He carries a deadly poison. This man is skilled with silver needles. The first time my attendants noticed his suspicious behavior, they paid close attention and saw him applying medicine to his needles in a secluded spot. At the time, we assumed he was a wandering quack engaged in swindling and fraud. Now that I knew his true identity, I informed Lu Hexing of his daily routine and the source of his medicine. Half a day later, the spy was captured in a single sweep. Along with him, the entire network of contact points was wiped out. Lu Heking suddenly asked, "When are you returning to the capital?" I was a bit puzzled. "Do you know me?" A faint blush touched his ears as he met my gaze with candor. Many years ago, this humble one had the misfortune of placing third in the imperial examinations. At the Changlin banquet, I had the honor of meeting you briefly. It suddenly dawned on me. So he was the third-place scholar. No wonder he was as fair as jade, so cool and handsome. I had no desire for small talk. I wanted him to leave at once. But his gaze was intense, and he spoke with a touch of urgency. "If you are to choose a husband again, Princess, would you consider Lu?" I gave him a thorough once-over and said, without a trace of emotion, "Unless there is some unspeakable secret, Lord Lu, you must surely have a wife and children by now. And even if not, you must surely have several fine concubines at home." The corners of his fox-like eyes betrayed a hint of unexpected shyness as he replied, "I come from a merchant family. My household has more than enough wealth. I have practiced martial arts for many years, so I am in good health and have no such unmentionable circumstances. It is simply that in the past, I never found anyone I wished to marry, nor did I ever consider taking concubines. That is why I have remained unmarried until now." I gave him a few perfunctory replies and sent him on his way. Yet a month later, I received my first letter from my father. He wrote that the emperor had fallen ill and was suffering from severe paranoia. After 3 years of my absence, he had once again taken to urging me to marry. I clutched the letter, thinking of the man I had sent away. I immediately ordered someone to go ahead and investigate his background thoroughly. Sure enough, his family background was impeccable. Best of all, he owed me no life-saving debt, nor did he have any former lovers. As it happened to be the Dragon Boat Festival, I invited him out to watch the boat races. He was the complete opposite of Gu Yunchuan. Not only was he not the least bit stiff, but in stark contrast to his cool, aloof appearance, he was surprisingly talkative. Here was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, eating a zongzi. Under my smiling gaze, he mustered up the courage to list 8 of its virtues. Only after he had finished did I realize I'd forgotten. "Since you're from Jiangnan, Magistrate Lu, you're not used to salty zongzi." He, however, didn't seem to mind. Having been in the capital for so long, I've long since grown accustomed to the local customs and cuisine. I was even more pleased. By then, the boat race had reached a critical juncture, the outcome was about to be decided, and the crowd began to stir. Amid the clamor and crush, the railing of the restaurant collapsed with a crash. Yet the people in front continued to surge uncontrollably toward the inn, and for a moment everyone was thrown into chaos. As the crowd surged forward, it toppled the display cabinet separating the main hall. I watched helplessly as it came crashing toward me, trapped in the crush and unable to move or dodge. Instinctively, I closed my eyes. At that very moment, a somewhat unfamiliar scent of cedar completely enveloped me. I was swept into the arms of the man who had arrived. He grunted softly, but what came out of his mouth was, "My apologies." He then told me to hold on tight, and with a few leaps, he carried me to a clear spot on the adjacent terrace. Without time for explanation, he leaped down, summoned the on-duty officials from the Ministry of Justice, and quickly quelled the disturbance. As the commotion subsided, a familiar figure stumbled toward us. Standing on the terrace, I gazed across the void at Gu Yunchuan, who was safely among the crowd below. In an instant, his eyes filled with despair. Lu Hexing finished his business and rushed over anxiously. Without even glancing at the people below, he asked only if I was all right. I whispered, "I don't like it when my husband keeps secrets from me, Lu Hexing." He fell silent for a moment, patted his injured back, and said casually, "I don't believe that a debt of gratitude can give rise to romantic feelings. You might not believe it, but I'm a man of principle, with everyone. From the very first meeting, I know exactly how I'll treat her in the future." He added, with a touch of sarcasm, "You believe that a fleeting glance is enough to make you feel affection for Magistrate Ji. So why wouldn't you believe me?" I retorted, "That's exactly why I know my feelings for him aren't deep." He didn't even bother pretending anymore. "Then you're no match for me, I told you. I'm a man of principle." But when he saw me sneeze in frustration, splashing myself with water that had spilled from a vase on the display cabinet, he silently went downstairs and returned with a large cloak from somewhere. I shot him a glare. As he bit his lip, about to apologize, a small crack quietly opened in my heart. Sunlight finally pierced through the gloom that had shrouded my heart for so many years. The day of the wedding was a sunny one. This time, Jinghe came to help me with my bridal preparations. Her sharp edges had been smoothed away over the years. She looked so much gentler now. From her, I learned the full story of what had happened back then. For instance, her elopement had been tacitly permitted by the emperor. Marrying his daughter into a prominent family was in essence a compromise. Yet, out of pride, he also wanted to bring some disgrace upon the Shi family. From start to finish, he placed his daughter last. He had calculated everything, but he never anticipated that Jinghe truly loved Shi Langan. She decided to elope precisely because she did not want to hinder Shi Langun's future. Not long after we left the city, I regretted it. I knew I could never escape my father's 72 personal guards, so I told Lord Gu the truth. He didn't hesitate for a moment. He turned back immediately to find you, but by then you had already returned to the prince's mansion. The servants blocked him. He couldn't get in. Ningping, though, I've always resented you for having such wonderful parents and have always been hostile toward you. In the end, I truly didn't want Gu Yunchuan to abandon you. I smiled indifferently. Between people, it is simply a matter of fate bringing us together and fate parting us. I don't care whether that affair actually happened, but I don't want a husband who is so calculating that he puts me last. A malicious thought struck me, and I added, just like how your father married you into the Shai family, yet gave you a dowry greater than that of any princess from the previous dynasty. Satisfied to see her face turn pale as she clutched her burned hand, I continue. I will never forgive you, and I am always ready to kick you while you're down. It was as if we had returned to our youth, sparring fiercely, neither giving an inch. This time, it was she who fled in disarray. My husband was waiting outside to greet me, mounted on a fine steed. He was gentle and considerate, a cheerful gentleman without a single shadow of a troubled past. Even if more trials lay ahead, I had already walked the hardest paths. What was there left to fear? A gentle breeze brushed my face as he quietly took my hand from beneath my sleeve, and together we bowed before the altar. Amid the crowd, a pair of eyes gazed at me with deep gloom, but I paid them not the slightest heed. 3 more years passed, and I was blessed with both a son and a daughter. The emperor's most favored third prince staged a rebellion. With the support of the aristocratic clans, he ascended the throne, yet he continued to favor those from humble backgrounds. The former court officials were merely neglected or demoted, except for Liu Heking. He acted as an insider, yet his expression remained utterly matter-of-fact. The emperor treats you poorly. I refuse to swear allegiance to him. I covered his mouth and said, "That is the former emperor. What nonsense are you spouting?" Yet a smile played at the corners of my lips as I let him slip the jade hairpin he'd carved himself into my hair. At that very moment, Princess Jinghe, who had married into the Shi family, left the palace to establish her own estate, taking her prince consort with her. However, the imperial physician diagnosed her as being riddled with ailments, causing a massive uproar in the capital. Shortly after this incident, the former emperor passed away. After his passing, the old ministers led by Gu Yunchuan were successively demoted or exiled to their hometowns. Only Gu Yunchuan requested exile of his own accord. The day before his departure, he came to seek an audience with me, just as he had done many times before. This time, I granted his request. He said he had never harbored affection for anyone else. His relationship with Princess Jinghe had been, from start to finish, nothing more than a repayment of a debt of gratitude. And after realizing his feelings for me, he had never wavered in his devotion. Back then, the situation had unfolded so suddenly. He had been absolutely certain that no one would lose their life over it. He had gone with the resolve to repay his debt of gratitude one last time, and then sever all ties with Jinghe forever. I listened patiently until he finished, then picked up where he left off. I told him the story of the bet we'd made all those years ago, how I'd lost a gold ingot. His face turned deathly pale, and he looked utterly lost. Chutang, following my lead, spoke up to send him away. "This is the last time our princess will see you, Minister Jiyu. You are truly no good." He hesitated, as if wanting to speak, but only 2 streams of tears fell. Finally, he turned and fled in a panic. In the years that followed, all letters from Zhongnian were read by Liu Hexing. He would put on a theatrical air as he read them to me. At the end, he would mutter, "What kind of old-fashioned opera actor is this? He's even gotten the hang of being a mistress. What a bad omen." I didn't catch that, so I asked him to repeat it. But he was back to his cheerful self, replying without hesitation, "You know, I come from a merchant family. Even after serving as an official for so long, I still slip into coarse language now and then. I won't pollute your ears with it." I was half convinced, half skeptical. Yet, under his ever-gentle gaze, I closed my eyes in peace and drifted into a deep sleep on the small couch.